The first one we're going to have tonight is the Crystal Stack. So that's instant, super fast, 100% type safe full stack apps that use Postgres. So without further ado, I'd like everybody to give a warm round of applause for our first Alex.
Talk over while I get set up. So my name is Alex Wilmer. I am a staff software engineer at a company called TopStep.com. Over the course of my career, I worked with a bunch of different databases, and early on I got introduced to GraphQL, so I was like stewed in that ecosystem for a long time. But I never really used Postgres. It just, as a matter of just chance, I never worked at a job where Postgres was like part of the main thing. Obviously, Postgres is a super popular option for stuff like Ruby on Rails. It's a pretty default option for those things. It's very powerful software. And some of the stuff that I worked on in my heyday was like, I want to be able to take like a data model or something, like for instance, Elasticsearch was one they used. Is I just want to take the data model and I want to use as much of the data model to generate like the rest of the stack for me, right? There's a lot of reasons why you might want to do that. One is as the data model changes, right? Typically, okay, fine, that's just the first step. Someone's got to go in and make a migration. Then they got to go into the API, update all the REST endpoints. That could be a lot of files touched. And if you're using TypeScript or something, you then go over to the front end and update all your TypeScript stuff. There's a lot of links in the chain in terms of things that would theoretically be nice if you just like changed one thing one place and then the whole rest of the app just automatically updates itself. And that's what I'd like to talk about today, because I was presented with a bit of an interesting challenge at my current job. Was they were like, hey, here's this Ruby on Rails app. It was built in, I don't know, 1875. It's on a really old version of Ruby. Nobody knows how to update it. But you know, we have customers and we need to get moving here. So I looked at first thing, you know, just open up the database and look at the data model, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. So I knew that these kinds of tools existed because I've used them before. These things that like what they call introspection queries. They look at the schema and then they do some work. They're kind of like, you know, it's not, you know, like when I say instant, it's a little bit of a clickbait title, but it's fast, right? It's like it skips a lot of those steps. So as I did some shopping around, and I'm very grateful, I have some friends that are like big Postgres wizards. I was like, hey, what are you guys using? And I was pointed in the direction of this amazing tool, not Claude, also a good amazing tool. Okay, this one. So this is called PostGraphile. Let's read this tagline real here. PostGraphile. What is this?
I think that's the dongle.
Yeah. Oh, okay. PostGraphile uses automation and intelligent defaults to eradicate time-consuming, repetitive parts of building the best practices GraphQL API, yada, yada, yada. It truly runs rings around your traditional API development practices. So that was a pretty good selling point for me. I was going to try it out. And I've grown to really love it for many reasons. Like what I was saying before, is it really cuts out a lot of the busy work when building an application. But on top of that, like if you know, just in the traditional sense, right? If you're building an app with a Postgres backend and a REST API, possibly you're somewhere in the stack, you might have an ORM, right? And that ORM, you're defining a bunch of models or classes, and sometimes you're writing raw SQL queries when you need to do something special, but sometimes you just offload the SQL queries to the ORM and hope that it's doing the right thing. And I've heard a lot of horror stories about various types of ORMs and stuff like that, so I kind of like started getting more into writing raw SQL queries just to like get better at it myself and like to really understand what Postgres offers. And tools like this, and like ostensibly ORMs as well, they're trying to write the best SQL queries on the market. Like you can try to recreate them, but it's gonna be faster if that's the entire product. And so I have found that the output of the SQL queries from this is really good. But let's just dive right in and see what we can do. So, okay, first things first, I have a file to start Postgres. I'm already running this. I'm going to stop this. Actually, I'm just going to trash it. We'll see what happens. Where did it go? I think I did delete it. All right. Oh, it's right here. Crystal. Let's trash it. Don't need that anymore. And Docker compose. Very simple. Postgres, crystal. Let's give it a new DB name. Crystal demo. And let's start that up. Docker compose up. All right, that's doing something. Should have started here now. Okay. This is it's orb stack is kind of like the Docker desktop thing. Not super important. And then there's like the Postgres viewer like tools like dbeaver. I use one called Postico. So let's connect. So I think I just changed the name of the database to crystal_demo. And let's hope that connected. It says connection to database failed. What did I do wrong? Is it running? So if I didn't make a terrible mistake and make this demo not work anymore. Crystal demo. What is it not like? Localhost, Horizon database, Crystal. That probably says Crystal too. Well then, I shouldn't have done that, I guess. Oh, it says database directories contains a database. Let's change the path in my Docker file. Oh, the demo gods. Postgres data, Postgres. Like just after here. Let's see. All right.
No, 3.
How
Or you might have to change the volume name.
Change the volume name?
Yeah.
This one too?
Do Postgres data 2,
Oh.
and then Postgres data 2 on line 12. And then
Postgres data. Oh, here, there, too. I don't think I actually need to do that, but let's see. That's what
get rid of the 2 after data.
All right, thank you. All right, let's see if this works. Let's clear this up again, just to be safe. And I guess I should have read those error messages. That looks better. Okay, and now we start this. Connect. Connected. Okay, cool. Let's put this to the side. Open this up. I've got some SQL queries going on here. All right, so I've got Postgres running. Now, the post graph file. Did I just close it? Oh, incredible error. Right, so there's no tables. There's nothing on the side. Right, just the blank database. Let's connect the post graph file magic command line thing to it and see what we can make and see what it outputs, right? So I think I have this set up here. Should look something like that, but I changed the name of the database to Crystal Demo. So what it's doing? npx is installing some library called PGL with some plugin called Amber, and I'm just connecting it directly there. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it's doing something. It's listening on some server. Let's check it out. All right, what do I have on the side here? So this is my GraphQL interface. I can write queries and I can do stuff, but I don't have anything. There's no data model, right? There's nothing to actually query. I have just an empty query box. So let's change the database. Let's make a person table. Execute. Whoa! All right, great. Now we have. So I made a person table, and now my GraphQL query, or my GraphQL API, my schema, all of a sudden I have all people with all this pagination information and filtering. And look, it's even got edges, nodes, cursor pagination API I can use. Total count, node. Look, it did a nice kind of Railsy thing where it took my person and pluralized it to all people. Person by ID. Look at all the stuff that it just made for me, just by doing one thing. Let's add some extra fields, right? So execute. Oh, this is another thing too, right? So if I hover over Oh yeah, as I'm clicking this, the query just all filling in as I'm doing it. So like, let's get all people with nodes and name and row ID. I don't need these ones. Oops. Edges is complaining because it needs a sub query. You don't need this. I also don't have any data in here, so it's just going to return empty array. But again, you can already start to see there's something cool here, right? I'm up and running pretty fast. Now, of course, if you might ask, right, it's like, well, why do I need this at all, right? It's like, okay, well, just in general, right? You can't just go to SQL directly. You do need something that sits between your database and your clients. And so even though I'm just running this as a command line, of course you can run this inside your API server of choice. You can like hook it into Express or whatever else, right? And then you can wrap these fields with your authentications, or if when you're creating a user, you might want to send an email, right? So all the kind of typical stuff that you need to do in a regular API server, but this cuts out a lot of the busy work. I'm actually curious, like, can I see the SQL query that I ran on this? Let's see already. So I think there's like a explain tab. Oh, I think that's like a flag I might have had to add. Anyways, I'll show you the, oh here, SQL query. Okay, oh, it's even got like this mermaid diagram. That's a little hard to see, but SQL query. All right, cool. I mean, this is a very simple query. There's not too much to look at here, but this is nice to see, right? So if you want to check out what it's doing under the hood, it's debugging some stuff. Okay, that's querying both stuff. What about like inserting, all the other stuff? Creates, mutations, updates, deletes. Let's look at what we got under mutation. Okay, perfect. Create person, update person ID. Like already, this is good for just hitting the ground running on something. And because it is a GraphQL API as opposed to a REST API, which we can talk about in more length, but it's type safe. These queries are type safe, right? So if I try to, query the field foo on here, right? It's gonna throw an error, right? When you're working on your client side, right? So I don't know if you're a full stack dev or you have front end devs and back end devs, but your front end dev is going to have this contract, right? So even as they're typing it out, if they have a typo, they're going to see that right away in their editor, saying like, "Oh, that field doesn't exist." All right, so lots of good stuff on it. Let's add a few more things here. Actually, I kind of wanted to try this. It's hockey season. Let's see how good Claude can do. Can you write me an SQL script to create tables for NHL teams and players that have a foreign key relationship? Alrighty then. Let's see what I get out of this. Okay, so one extra here. Okay, it's great. Index is forming. Oh, it's even giving me data. Beautiful. Come on. Hey, Connor, Dave's on there. Right on. Yep. Okay, this is probably good enough. Let's see what happens. I'll just copy all of this. I think there's a copy button. No, copy. Where's the copy button? And copy, post to co. Let's make a new thing. Let's see what happens. Execute. I have a syntax error. Auto-quit. Well, these things happen. This isn't the super important part. Line 2, it doesn't like auto increment. I don't even need that. Doesn't make it like Postgres compatible. I don't even know. Yeah. That's okay. I can show you. I was hoping that would work and it would be great. But what's cool about when you have those like foreign key constraints and the foreign keys and the indexes, the PostgreSQL will pick all that stuff up, right? And then if you want to, what you would normally write like as a join call, right? You say I want to get all the NHL teams, and for this team I want to get all the players on that team, right? So the query would look very convenient, and the PostgreSQL really relies on one thing that is really cool about it is that if you have you want to make a query, you can write some pretty bad queries, right? If you don't like, if you were so inclined and you're like, I'm just going to write this, right? You can write a join, a filter on fields that aren't indexed, and that can cause very, very long queries or table scans as they would, right? Because of the sort of best practices in auto-generated nature of how PostgreSQL works, right? In order for, let's go back to this. Where am I? In order for this to be generated, like if you wanted to have a nested field saying like, get me all of this on this, right? So if I said, this is all people, if there was something under here like cats, right? In order for that query to exist, you have to create that index and that foreign key relationship. So it forces you to write a very good GraphQL schema, and it really hints at you too. It's like, hey, that field should be here, right? So, oh, I'm missing an index. So that's really great. I found that that's been super useful. Obviously, a lot of the things that are, how should I say, busy work in a lot of APIs, pagination, filtering, sorting, that stuff can take a long time just to code. Even if you come up with like you download like a good plugin for it, it's still a lot, right? So if you wanted to, we don't have cats here, but let's just write like, okay, first, give me the first 10 of them. Offset, filter. Let's look at the filters. If I say filter, I just hover over this. Hover. Filter. Doesn't like me today. Okay, let's add an argument. Filter is of type person filter. Person filter. Where's my filter? Oh, you know what? I think I forgot to add a plugin. Never mind. I'll show you that somewhere else. Okay, I'll get back to that. All right, so auto-generated API. That's kind of the first step. So this is all the API stuff, right? It's a lot of scope to talk about how you would wrap these things for authentication and write queues and all the other kind of thing that you would need to do. But what's sort of like the next step here, right? So we would want to call this from a client, right? And we want the client to have access to the GraphQL schema. So there's this nice series of introspection calls. You have a Postgres schema. The PostGraphFile library introspects the Postgres schema to create the GraphQL schema, and then we can use something for downstream of that to introspect the GraphQL schema to do stuff like build TypeScript types. So check this library out if you haven't heard of it. This is GraphQL CodeGen. This comes to save the day for all our TypeScript needs when we're dealing with APIs, right? I was saying before, it's very common if you're working on front ends that are using React, or TypeScript React, you'll see a file that has an interface. That interface is there because you're making a GET request or a POST request, and you have a response type and a request body type, and you have all these types, right? And they're handwritten somewhere. And so as soon as somebody goes to make a model change in the database, right? Maybe they missed a type or something. So you want to keep all that stuff in sync. In fact, theoretically, you don't even want to commit that stuff into GitHub. You just want to ignore all your types, right? And when you get the code, you hit one button and it just auto-generates all that stuff. So let's run some of this auto-generating stuff. So I have this, right? So this, sorry, I'm losing my place a bit, right? So here I have the entire data model. These are all the things that are exposed by my GraphQL server that was created by just a few lines of Postgres SQL that we typed in. Let's run a CodeGen command and see what we get. So I think I'm going to start with, so I have that library installed, that GraphQL CodeGen one. I don't go bigger. That's as big as it gets? Okay. npm run CodeGen. Okay, it did something. What happened? Let's take a look. Cursor. App. Now I have this new schema.graphql file. Huzzah! So now I can use this schema.graphql file then now when I'm writing queries on the front end, I can make sure that the queries match this schema, so I get that like real-time type information to make sure that all the fields I'm trying to access actually exist on that type. This is true for all of the like the inputs, the variables, the filters, the order bys, all that kind of good stuff. So let's imagine now, right? I'm writing some code and I want to make a query. So I have this folder called GraphQL, and my workflow has been really nice doing this. It's like I'll use this interface to get the exact query that I want, and when I'm done, I'll just like copy paste this, put this into here. You're like, yep, that's what I want. And then once it's here, so now I have this query. I don't even know if I put these nodes in here. Let's just say, forgot to add these. Say name and row ID, and name. I'll mess with this later. Oh, cool. What can we do? What other plugins can we do? So I have another CodeGen plugin, which is super cool, that I'm going to run it. npm run CodeGen app. npm run CodeGen app. Okay. And so it didn't fail. That's interesting. So that means I have a query there that's working. I can also run this in watch mode. This is like what I would normally do at work. Run it in watching. So now it's watching something. Let's break this. If I have a bad query, okay. Cannot query field names on type person. That's good. That's convenient. Well, I'm working in a lot of real-time feedback about this query. So let's put this back. It fixed itself. And what did I get now? Well, because I'm in this React ecosystem, it created this generated output, which has all these hooks I can use. So it's like before, I don't know if people have used React Query or something, but like all I really want is I just want to execute that query in a type-safe manner with the least possible code I can write on the front end, and I want it all to be type-safe. So like here, I can just import, use people query I just generated, and it says, so I can, if I had like filters or order bys and all that kind of stuff, I can add that there. But also if I hover over data, data is a people query, so I can say data dot all people dot nodes dot map, Just keep going down here. Person, oh, it's complaining. Person, possibly no. Thank you so much. I need a question mark. I need another question mark. That's really powerful stuff. If anybody's worked with a REST API before, that it's like, oh wait, I didn't make a meme for this.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what happens a lot with REST APIs. So at this point in the demo, so when I was coming up with how I wanted to show this off, there is a bit of configuration involved when you're doing this in a production environment, and so that one line, command line that I wrote that actually does creates the GraphQL server, I can't figure out how to get it to support cores. So when I was testing this, it's like, no, my demo! Cores. I'll use the cores flag, can't get it going. Okay, screw it. So I'm just going to hop over to my work code, and we'll just delete one of the pages, and we'll try something right there. Let's see how well that goes. So, all right. I can shut all this stuff down. It was good while it lasted here. I don't need that anymore either. Postgres, you're done. All right, let's start all this stuff. First of all, let's open this up. Make sure I'm doing something smart here. Okay. Let's run that PostgreSQL server. So that's running on 4000. We take a look here. Okay, here we have actual data now. But this is where I can show you some of the other stuff. So we have that users field, for instance. Oh, also, by the way, this is what I was saying. By the time I started doing this, there was already a giant Postgres model. right? So what like what got generated here just by virtue of looking at this, like there's a lot of stuff going on. Right? This isn't even that big. Like I can imagine somebody that's working on a much more complicated app than ours. Like there's going to be so many automatically generated fields here, and because we turn off the mutations because we don't want to, like if you just say like, hey, here's my SQL database and here's an automated API, and oops, I exposed to delete everything field, right? So just for safety reasons, we turn it off. So this is all just the all of the fields that get automatically generated just for reads, right? But let's look like a filter for reads, right? So if I say filter, oh, now it exists, and I hover over that, user filter, I get all these filtering options, right? All the different things I can filter on, write very nice queries. What about some nested information? I think we have a like a join on something called a contact info accounts. Sure. Nodes. Start date status. Okay, so that now that's getting all the users and all their accounts. So it's actually the speed of these queries is pretty impressive. Let's see if I can look at that like explain tab here. Explain. I clicked on a bunch of stuff and it showed up. Here we go. SQL query. Right? Okay, it's not that bad, right? But you can imagine if you're doing a lot of joins, you're doing a lot of filters. Let's add some filter in here. Let's say, okay, first 10, and then filter where, I don't know, email. Look at all these options I get. Distinct, not distinct, in, less than, greater than, not include sensitive. Okay, it includes the letter A. Now it's my query. Right, it's a little more complicated there, but it's got, you can see in there, it's got the limit is added.
The where clause.
The where clause, yes, where, okay, right? Powerful stuff. Again, this is what I was talking about, that this is great. As opposed to, for instance, which, I just wanted to like say for sure, I'm sure that there are some places in this application where you have something like, let's say, payouts, and then, okay, response, any. Axios responsive any and any, right? So it's like, somewhere there's, I'm sure, a file with a bunch of interfaces, right, so that they need to be updated manually and constantly all the time. Anyways, this is the whole spiel of what I'm trying to say, right? So there's a super amazing tool that does a lot of the work for you. The queries are very fast. It's very extensible, so it's totally production ready. We've been using this in production. All of our stuff is wrapped in authentication. In fact, it forced me to learn all these cool things you can do with Postgres, like writing custom Postgres functions, which then get automatically picked up into this system. So if you wanted to create virtual fields or materialized views, those can all get added. If you want to do like aggregate queries, that also gets picked up. I learned about row level security, which is a super powerful feature in Postgres, and so that also all gets picked up into the system. And so I highly recommend anyone just to peruse through it. Now I call this whole thing the crystal stack. So PostGraphFile is one of the tools that makes up this crystal stack. So there's lots of stuff in here. There's a really, really cool migration tool. Of course, if you're using Ruby on Rails, it has its own way of doing migrations, etc. This one here called GraphFile Migrate. It's on that list somewhere. Migrate. It should be. It's one of the tools in the thing. Hey, so there's lots of just cool, like this, it's all these, the person that authors this and his team, they're some of the just most die-hard Postgres power users I've ever seen before. So they build all these tools, they put them together, and they make them to try to be as easy as you can possibly use. And it has saved me a tremendous amount of time, and it's made our queries faster, it's made our runtime way more type safe. It's totally reduced the amount of load that the developers have to do, because oftentimes we don't even need to touch any API code, right? We just want to add an extra field on the UI somewhere. Anyways, that's that. Any questions?
We have time for like 2 or 3 questions. If anybody has any questions, going once, going twice. I have a question. If no one has a question, so I think, given your software engineering experience, one of my concerns when I teach someone who's new in the field code gen is I worry about like, do they even know what they don't know what they don't know about potentially, like, is the code that has been generated, how do I trust it? How do I, my experience, because I had to learn how to write all these by hand, I think I know how to verify the code gen. But let's say someone is a new developer, like what are some of the things you have to be careful about when you are using the code gen?
That is a very good question. I guess I have 2 answers for this. I mean, obviously we can extrapolate this to what vibe coding now, right? You just do something in the class. All right, now I said nothing. But let's just say you have to pick a reasonable starting point, right? When I started coding, I don't think anyone was, maybe around that time they're like, oh, you have to learn what OOP is really doing or something, and it's like, do you actually know how assembly works, right? Or C, right? There's always some lower level of stuff where that's generated for you, right? When you're writing JavaScript for the browser, that something in there is turning that into C++ code, at least on Chrome. There is a reasonable set of things that I think that you should just generally know. So you should generally know how to write SQL queries, how index, at least if that's what you're interested in. There's other databases, so I think there's a reason why like the sort of, these are the things you start learning when you get into stuff, basics about, function constructs, loops, just data structures, the kind of stuff that you'd expect to be taught at a computer science program or like a web dev boot camp or something. You don't need to, but I would recommend learning enough of that as a broad concept. I would also say a good tool generator it's not proprietary, right? So for instance, this one did show you the SQL output if you were curious. I know that, I guess Active Record or whatever does also have something similar to that. Like you can say like SQL debug and it'll show you the actual SQL output. When you say, users.create in Rails, right, you don't know what the SQL query is under the hood. But you raise a good point. This is a cool tool, and I think it's good for my work, and it might be good for your work, because you have stuff to do, and you don't have time to write all that stuff. But it is definitely more comfortable to occasionally take a step back and like build the pieces manually, if you have the time.
Cool, thank you. Any questions from the audience?
So you've used Postgres. What are your thoughts on that compared to other databases?
Databases?
Yeah.
I fell in love with Postgres very recently. There's a reason why it's industry standard. It is an incredibly powerful tool. It's also just really well built. So it's very extensible. The fact that it has those things like row-level security, which is the type, it's very common for application developers to have like a middleware somewhere that says it reads a token, and then if you have this permission, okay, now you can run this query. But it's cool that Postgres has a whole way of doing that directly in the database. So it's like you write a policy that says only people with this kind of setting can actually access these rows at all. So if you write that as your starting authentication, then you're pretty much guaranteed everything that you build on top of that is going to be good too. As opposed to if someone like accidentally messes up something in the code and it hits a table it shouldn't hit or something like that. Probably someone else could explain why Postgres versus something like MySQL or SQL Server. I'm not that hip on the different SQL flavors. But I'm huge on other types of like Elasticsearch is amazing. There was one that I used before called Rethink database. It's dead now, but that one was really cool. So like a lot of the data, each database comes with its own like very really cool thing. But Postgres kind of has a special place as like a really serious contender for being like probably one of the most commonly used, most robust databases out there and like powerful. So.
And you mentioned it was open source too, correct?
Postgres, totally, yeah. Big time open source. All the stuff, everything I showed you today is open source. So all for free. And it's like, there are some tools that are kind of open source, but then there's like a cloud interface or something. This is all just packages and open source tools.
Cool. I think we got time for one more question. Nope? Okay. Well, thank you, Alex.
Thanks very much.